Welcome to today's biology class. So in today's biology class, we are going to be looking at essays. So this is the first episode where I start looking on essays. In this part, I'll be solving for you exam past paper essay and showing you what most pupils make mistakes when they are solving essays. So don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out the next videos on what essays. These are very important because essays is one of the most important part in biology. You have to do well on essays. Then next thing, also share to your friends who may need this video and like if this video was helpful to you. So to begin, the question is saying describe the movement of organic solutes in phloem tissue. Then B is saying outline the process of measuring the rate of transpiration using a potometer. Then the last one is saying explain the factors that affect the rate of transpiration. So this entire question is 12 marks and you have to choose 3. So meaning 3 times 12, that's what? 46. Yeah, that's 46 marks. So essay carries 46 marks. So you need to get at least above 20 or everything if you are good. So to begin, first you need to understand where the question is coming from. So where does this question come from? So this question comes from a topic known as transport in plants. So most of you have subscribed to my channel. I've noticed that recently I did a live class where we talked about transport in man. So this video I'll cover the part for transport in plants, the entire part via these essay questions. So everything you need to know about transport in plants are here. So I would advise you to maybe have a book by your side so that you keep on writing some points which I'll be telling you. Yeah. So how can we describe now the movement which happens in phloem tissue? So first thing you need to understand what is phloem. So when you're talking about a phloem, this is just a tissue which is responsible for transporting what? Organic solutes. So these are responsible for transporting organic solutes. So what are these organic solutes? So organic solutes can be sucrose, all those nutrients which are manufactured by the process of photosynthesis. So when you are talking about phloem, we say that this is a tissue which transports. Now what is the process that is responsible? So the process that is responsible is known as translocation. So whenever you hear the word translocation, what should come into your mind is that this is the movement of organic solute or manufactured food from the source to sink site. So sink site, these are sites of storage or uses where the food are needed to be used. So with us, before we write what you need to write on the essay part, I need to explain to you this diagram which you need to write somewhere. So if you have a paper and a pen, I would advise you pause the video, you draw the diagram and follow through as I'm labeling it. Yeah. So we said the first part which is responsible for transporting organic solute is known as the phloem. So this thing is what is known as the phloem. And the phloem has small tubes which are known as sleeve tubes. So it has what are known as sieve tubes. So these two dot-like structures are known as sieve tubes. So now what is the process? So first thing, we have the leaf. So this is the leaf which has the sucrose. So this is the leaf and what? The origin. So this is where the xylem, or this is where the phloem is getting the what? The organic solutes. Then after getting the organic solutes from the leaf, they are loaded where? On the sieve tubes. Then this sieve tube usually what? Are the ones which carries the organic solute. Then you can notice that on this other part we have another tube. So this tube is known as xylem. So what is the importance of xylem? So xylem is responsible for transporting water. So this is responsible for transporting what? Water. So xylem only transports water. So meaning this water here will diffuse where? Into the phloem. So once the water diffuses into the phloem, it will cause what? Pressure. So we are seeing that here water is coming from the roots, then it diffuses into the phloem, building up pressure. Then once that pressure is built up, that organic solute or sucrose or glucose or the food will start to move now to what? To sink site, the site for storage and usage. So what are the sink sites? So we have this part. So this part is known as the sink site. Where, what are the sink site? So the sink site is where now the what? Sucrose is unloaded for use. E.g. we have roots. Yeah. Then here we have the origin, as I said. Then once the food reaches the sink site, the water now returns to the xylem. So this is how the plant does what? Transports organic solutes. So now how can you write in your essay so that you get marks? Yeah. So you can say that the first point always define the process. So you can say that organic solutes such as sucrose or glucose are transported by translocation. So here you have shown them that okay, the process of movement of organic solute is known as translocation. Then once you say that, now you can explain how translocation occurs. So now you can say, the organic solutes now are done what? So the organic solutes are loaded on the sieve tubes at the source. So we said that at the source or origin, at the origin, which can be what? Leaves. So I've shown you the diagram here. We say that this is where now the organic solute are loaded into the sieve plate. Then after they are loaded into the sieve plate, water enters the sieve tube through osmosis. So here I need to mention a point. So whenever I talk about the movement of water, make sure you include osmosis in your sentence. So whenever there is movement of water, always include osmosis. If you forgot osmosis, then your answer will be wrong. So now you say water enters the sieve tube through what? Osmosis, creating a pressure. So here now we are creating what? A pressure. So once this pressure is created, the what now? The organic what? Solute. So organic solutes start to move by pressure flow. So what is pressure flow for those? So whenever we talk about pressure flow, this is the movement of molecules from the what? From the point or from the area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. So here we are saying that the leaves, we have a lot of organic solute. So it is moving away from where it is higher to where it is lower. So that is the meaning of pressure flow. From where? By pressure flow, so it is moving from, so it's right where it is moving from the source, which can be leaves, to sink site, which can be roots. Once you write like this, meaning you have described how organic solutes move in what? In phloem tissue. You can get the entire 4 marks here. Why? Because you have mentioned what? Sink site. So these terms I'm marking, they are very, very important for you to remember. Don't forget them. Sink site, source, what is being transported? Organic solute, which are glucose or what? Or sucrose. Then you describe the process. Where are the organic solutes loaded? So you don't forget where they are loaded, because they are describing the movement. So they are loaded on the sieve tube. So this is an important term to remember. Then you also mention water. How does water enter? By osmosis. And don't forget this important key point, which is the pressure flow. So now, why have I highlighted this point? So the reason I've highlighted this point is that you have to describe. So whenever you're describing the movement, what should you put in your question? The first thing you should put in your question is what? What is being transported, which is sucrose. The second thing, when you're describing the movement of something, because a lot of question can come on movement, it's cannot be, so I'm just telling you. So the second thing, after I've described what is being moved, you describe now what? How it is being moved. So how it is being moved is that it is being loaded where? On sieve tubes. Then second, describe now how it is moved again. So it is moved now when what? Water enters the what? The sieve tube. So now, what makes water to move? The same organic solute. So that's where now you say by creating what? A pressure flow. Then you tell them now this is how they move from the source of the leaf to sink side. Meaning you have solved your part A. So now moving on to our part B, which is I'll try in the process of measuring the rate of transpiration using a potometer. So we have B here. So B, we are describing the process of measuring the rate of transpiration. How can we measure transpiration? So remember, the first thing whenever you are writing an essay, define what is being talked about. So we are talking about transpiration. So what is transpiration? So you can define transpiration for them. Because you cannot talk about something without knowing what it is. So you say transpiration is the diffusion of water vapor from leaves to the atmosphere. Yeah. So once you have defined what transpiration is, the examiners will know that, okay, this pupil has some knowledge. He knows what is talking about. So now we have described what transpiration is. This is how plants lose water. So now, how can we measure the way plants lose water? So here with me I have another diagram. So this diagram is a simple diagram of what is known as a potometer. So a potometer, this is an instrument which we use to measure the rate of transpiration. So now how can we measure it? So step 1, fill the potometer completely with water. So first let me label some parts which you know. So we can see here that we have a leaf. So this is the leaf we want to measure. So this is the leaf shoot. We want to measure the rate of this leaf shoot. Then we have what? Water here. So here we have water. Then this tube is known as the capillary tube. Then we have a scale here which will help us to measure the distance. We have a tap and we have a water reservoir. Yeah. So this, then we have also the rubber bag. So this is how a potometer looks like. So I told you should have where to write. So these two diagrams is a summary of the transportation in plants. This is the video where I discuss transportation in plants. So this is how we measure, or this is the diagram of a potometer. Now, how can we measure the rate of transpiration? So step 1, I told you, is to do what? So you say fill. So here first we introduce what I will say now. To measure the rate of transpiration, we start by feeding the, so here you can say start, not we. So you can just say start by feeding the potometer with water. And here you have to make sure there are no bubbles. Make sure there are no bubbles. Because the bubbles, they can affect our reading. So that's the first step. For us to start measuring, you have to fill the potometer with water. So this is the water you are seeing. Yeah, so you have filled the potometer with water. That is 1 mark. Then the second point you can say is, now we insert the leaf. So cut the leaf below, cut the leaf shoot under the water and fit the rubber bag. So you can see here we have a rubber bag. So once you insert your leaf shoot, you cut it, then you fix it tightly the rubber bag. So once you fix the rubber bag, now once you close it tightly so that no air can enter the water, now you can insert one bubble. So that bubble you can insert it anywhere. So once you insert the bubble, so we say that this is the bubble. So once you insert it inside the capillary tube. So now you say, once you insert the bubble inside the capillary tube, you can now open the tap so that you can measure the distance the bubble moved. That is what we can use to measure the rate of transpiration. So what are we saying? So the first step after you have cut the leaf shoot, introduce introduce the bubble into the capillary. So now once you introduce the bubble into the capillary tube and open the tap, to allow the bubble to move, to allow the bubble to move. Then measure the distance, measure the distance moved by the bubble. So this is how simple you can measure the rate of transpiration. Then after you have measured the distance moved by the bubble, you can use the formula, which is the rate of transpiration is equals to distance moved by the bubble multiplied by the cross section area of the capillary tube divided by time taken, which will give us the rate of transpiration. So this is how you can answer the question. So simple. So once you understand the topic, it becomes simple for you to write and solve essays. And another thing I'm telling you is that you cannot answer essay questions by just going through notes. You need to know how essay questions come so that you know how to answer them. So be sure to subscribe. So if you have watched this far, again, I'm saying subscribe so that you don't miss out. Exams are starting next month, which is July. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out. So moving on to our final question, which is explain the factors which affect the rate of transpiration. So what are the factors that affect the rate of transpiration? So here is the final part. Yeah. So the final part you are saying C. So meaning here you have gotten 4 marks. Even here you have gotten 4 marks. Yeah. Then part C. Now we are talking about the factors. So the factors which affect the rate of transpiration are 4. So per factor it is 1 mark. So you mention and you explain 1 mark. Mention, explain 1 mark. So you can start by saying that the factors that affect the rate of transpiration are temperature, humidity, light intensity, and wind. So these are the 4 factors which affect the rate of transpiration. We have temperature, wind, light intensity, and humidity. So now you can say, you write now temperature. So you can say now high temperature increases the rate of transpiration. So why does the high temperature increases the rate of transpiration? This is because high temperature increases the kinetic energy of the molecules, which can cause them to diffuse fast, because the kinetic energy, we say that this is energy possessed by the moving molecule. So once it increases, it diffuses fast. Then you move on to what? Humidity. So humidity, this is the measurement of what? The water vapor in the atmosphere. So imagine if we have a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere, meaning that water vapor which is at the surface of the leaf won't be needed. So meaning if we have high humidity, that's what? Reduces the rate of transpiration. Then when we talk about light intensity, so light intensity is the measurement of how something is bright and how something is dim. So we are measuring the dimness and the lightness of something. Then we know that whenever there is light, the stomata opens. So meaning if we have high light intensity, so high light intensity increases the rate of transpiration. Then the final what? The final factor. So we have wind. So wind, this is the moving air. So we say that on the surface of the leaf we have water vapor, and it is that water vapor which evaporates in the process of transpiration. So meaning if there is wind, that water vapor will be blown away, therefore increasing the rate of transpiration. So meaning wind increases the rate of transpiration. Meaning you have explained the factors which affect the rate of transpiration. So this is our first essay, and you have covered the entire topic of transport in plants. So be sure to subscribe and follow my TikTok account so that you don't miss out the next video.